evening and welcome to Ideas at Work and Beyond. This past week, I had what was for me an epiphany. I had my breaking point. I had an experience that has changed my outlook completely. And that was I rolled up to the local mobile station. My car was virtually on empty. I put the spigot in and started filling it with gas. And when it came to the end, I owed the gas companies $100 for a tank of gas. This to me was an epiphany. This to me said something needs to be done. Something needs to change. And I began to look. I had heard about this place called Anwar. We have some graphics that we're going to begin to roll. And I understand that up in Anwar, there are some caribou. And I realized that the caribou have rights, but I, as a driver, here's a sample of a caribou. We're going to get to our guests in just a minute. I have to get this off my chest. This is a caribou. We got a side angle of the caribou. That's what caribous look like. There are 1.5 million caribou in Anwar, Alaska, which is the northern regions of Alaska. We have some maps and some other things looking at the caribou. The caribou have rights, but so do we. We need to begin to drill for oil in Alaska. There are estimated 1.8 billion barrels of oil. By the way, there's a picture of the caribou coexisting with the oil industry. The oil industry began to drill for oil in Alaska, in this area, in 1977. In 1977, there were 3,000 caribou. Today, in that same region, there are 28,000 caribou. They're coexisting quite nicely. We need to begin to move right away. If we began to move and start drilling in Anwar, there's some maps here that show the extent of Anwar. You'll see the area, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, is up in the northern reaches of Alaska. Actually, the wildlife refuge itself is as large as the state of South Carolina. George Will, in his article, has talked about that area being the size of Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New Jersey. New Jersey and Delaware combined. Anyways, it's huge. And the areas that we would be using, you see it compared to the continental United States, the area that we would be drilling there is less than 2%. In the end of the 1.9 million acres, they would be using 2,000 acres to drill for oil. If we began to drill for oil now, it would have an immediate result on the cost of gasoline, just because the future traders on oil would begin to see that there would be this future source of oil. It's important. People have said that there's potential economic hazards there. I've been looking at this, again, after my epiphany of a $100 tank of gas. And you realize that Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita came through, and there are over 3,200 oil rigs off of Louisiana, and not one drop of oil was lost. There's a thriving commercial fishing industry, and they're coexisting nicely off of Louisiana. Anyways, I appreciate you listening to me. You might want to roll through a couple of those more things, and then, more importantly, I want to get to our guest this evening. But thank you. One more shot of the caribou. Apparently, there's one less caribou in Anwar. We don't need that till later. David Cappiello, thank you very much for coming in this evening. I appreciate you letting me get that off my chest.
My pleasure.
$100 for a tank of gas, and something needs to be done. So I'm promoting the thought of drilling for oil up on the northern reaches of Alaska. I think it's a good idea.
You must not have been on empty then, because I know people that pay $120 for their SUVs.
$120 for a tank of gas in their SUVs. That's incredible. David, I've looked you up on the internet. I've watched you on YouTube. I've looked at your career. I've had a little bit through Mark Nielsen. You sort of followed in Mark Nielsen's path.
That's correct.
What is motivating you to run for Congress?
There are a number of things. The first issue is I was born and raised in the city of Danbury, and my family's been here for 3 generations, and I love the city I live in. I love the job I'm doing right now in the state legislature, Many years ago, when things were going awry in this country in the early 90s, I had a choice when I was out of college. I could have either, moved out of state and looked for a job where there were jobs, or I could try to change my community in my state. So I ran for state representative, and I ran for state senate a few years later.
Successfully?
Successfully. I was very fortunate.
Have you ever lost a campaign for public office?
The voters have been very, very good to me. I first ran for council the year before that, and they were very good to me. I won, and I've been fortunate. I think...
Is that a yes?
No, I've never lost.
You've never lost?
I've never lost.
That's impressive.
Again, it's not me. I think it's the way the voters perceive the job that I've been doing in Hartford. We have a good communication. I've done all my constituent work and tried to let people know where I stood. There are some times when I don't agree with everybody in my district, but I think the people in my district always know that I'm doing what I think is the absolute best for them. And they've given me, their belief in me to keep reelecting me, and I've been very
Reelected to this as a state representative, how many times?
I was in the state house for 2 terms.
2 terms.
And then ran for the state senate, and this is my 5th term that I'm serving out right now.
5th term. So you have been an elected official in Hartford. What is that up to?
14 years. 14 years.
And now you have the opportunity to run for the United States Congress. That's big.
It's very big, and I have to tell you, even when I sit in my Senate chair in the Senate chamber, every once in a while I look around the building and the room and think how fortunate I am, because there's only 36 of us, and I've been able to make a difference.
It's like a big circle.
It's a beautiful
like the Knights
room.
of the Round Table.
It really is. It's a beautiful room, just as the House of Representatives is. And I look around and say, how fortunate am I? When I look back at the history of my family, who were Lebanese and Italian immigrants, back in the 1920s and 30s, they came to Danbury with nothing. With nothing. My dad had nothing. He was one of 8 children, an Italian family, and he was the first to open up a business in his early 20s, a jewelry store on Main Street. There's one in Ridgefield as well.
Is that right? One of your fathers? Okay.
My uncle runs the one in Ridgefield. Okay. And we had one in New Milford for a while, one in Carmel, New York.
What's the one in Ridgefield called?
Cappiello Jewelers. Cappiello Brothers Jewelers.
Okay.
And he was able to give me a much better life than he had growing up. I've been very fortunate. And he and my mom have built up a strong family name in the entire family, which frankly gave me an edge when I was running 15 years ago for council. Because people who knew me or didn't know me so well, I think gave me the benefit of the doubt because of my family. But I think I've worked on that name for the last 14, 15 years.
And now, how much money have you raised so far in your congressional campaign?
We haven't officially announced it yet, but I'll...
Is this the time to announce?
I'll say it right here.
Would you like to announce your running mate? Oh, wait, no, that's a different campaign.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
We've raised over $1.1 million so
$1.1 million. That's impressive.
And almost all of it is from individuals, real people, and almost all of it is from the state of Connecticut, and most of it from the 5th District.
Okay.
Which I think is important, because they're real people who are giving me money, people who care about the future of our state, not simply, PACs and lobbyists done in D.C. And I will say that my opponent, who ran 2 years ago on cleaning up Washington, and there being a dividing wall between PACs, lobbyists in Washington, and also accused the former Congresswoman Nancy Johnson of being in the pockets of lobbyists, has raised almost $1 million simply from PACs alone. He's in the top 10.
From lobbyists?
From PACs and lobbyists alone. Lobbyist individual contributions, I don't know how many there are. This is just from PACs, political action committees. The same group he swore to clean up down there. But he's
so your opponent runs on, hey, I'm Mr. Clean, I'm Mr. Outsider, I'm going to go to Washington, and we're going to make some changes and clean up this mess. He's there for 2 years. And he's into the trough. He's doing what he needs to do to raise money from all these special interest groups.
Well, just to put it into perspective, his first 3 months in office, he raised $400,000. Half of that from PACs and lobbyists. By the way,
before it's even a campaign year.
Before I was even in the race. And it was also before he'd introduced one single bill to Congress. So it took him many, many months later and hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional fundraising before he even introduced a bill. And to me, that's not representing the people in your district. That's representing you getting reelected.
All right. Well, now, let's just talk. I'm a bit of a political animal. I find this stuff very interesting. We're coming into an election year. Some have said it's going to be pretty tough for Republicans this year. We have a president who I personally have appreciated his presidency, but across the nation and certainly across the district here that you're running, the president isn't quite as popular. The economy's in trouble. Now you'll say, well, the economy's in trouble, the gasoline prices are out of control because the Congress, Pelosi, Reid, some of the environmental groups have blocked exploring for oil in these regions, citing environmental impacts. That's why I did the whole caribou thing. But you'd say, well, the reason we're having these struggles in the economy and so forth is because of the do-nothing Congress, and that's what you're going to try to change. An outsider might look and say, hey, the Republicans that were in office, for part of the time during the Bush administration, they controlled both the Senate and the Congress, and this is what we're left with. How do you answer that?
I would answer it's actually a little bit of, or a lot of both.
Okay.
When the Republicans had control of Congress, frankly, I was disappointed in them because they were spending far too much money for my liking.
Yeah.
On the state level, in the state Senate and the state House, I have been a very staunch fiscal conservative, trying to ensure that every tax dollar is being spent as wisely as possible. And frankly, only voted for 2 of the last 6 budgets under Republican governors because they were spending too much money and taxing too much.
Let me just on that note. Okay, we have a call coming in. Hold 1 second for a call. On that note, and I love the governor. You love the governor. Everyone loves Governor Rel. But if you go to YouTube and look you up on YouTube, there's a section that says, well, throw the governor under the bus. And I said, now this is fascinating. What did he do to throw the governor under the bus? But I went on it, and actually what you were talking about was a proposal that Governor Rel had put forward about raising taxes, and you broke ranks. And you said, hey, I'm a Republican, she's a Republican, but I'm not going to stand for that. Why did you do that?
Well, you're right, by the way. I do love the governor. I've known her for years.
Governor.
She's fantastic.
Yes.
But I don't always agree with her. And my job, even if I love her, isn't always just to agree with her. It's to represent my constituents.
Okay.
So when there was a proposal for a 10% income tax increase across the board, at a time when the economy was already beginning to be in decline, at a time when in the state of Connecticut, jobs were leaving the state still. We had the slowest job growth in the nation. We had the highest taxes in the nation. Things were not going well, in my opinion. The last thing we needed to do was raise taxes on people. Fortunately, eventually, the governor had come around. But by the way, in the interim, the Democrats couldn't help themselves, and they proposed up to a 40% income tax increase and a whole host of other tax increases, which is what I knew would happen once the governor opened up that door. But Republicans stuck together in the super minority in the House and the Senate, and we reined it back in, and we stopped the tax increases.
I mean, I don't know, for the voters out there, Republican, Democrat, taxes, this, I've gotten to know some of the Republicans in Hartford, and the heroic, remember the Alamo, circle the wagon, or whatever analogy you want to use, battle that they fought to not allow the Democrats to have this incredibly large tax increase in Hartford was just incredible what they were able to do. So I guess what I'm saying is if I'm a voter in the district and we're sending you to Washington, even if there's a McCain presidency or if there would have been like a Bush presidency, if they're looking for pork barrel spending that's going to cause taxes to go up on everyone, we can count on you to, even if it means breaking ranks with the Republicans, vote against that. Is that true?
Absolutely.
We're recording this, by the way, right? Because I want a record of this.
And I've already signed a pledge to do such. I don't sign very many pledges, by the way, but that's an important one, and I'll tell you why. When Chris Murphy was elected to Congress, before, when he was running, he was talking about earmark reform, shedding a light on earmarks, stopping earmarks. Mr. Clean, the day that he was sworn into office, he said he would rather deal with them altogether.
Okay.
However,
so far so good.
However, then the offers were being made, and he was putting in earmarks like everybody else, and it took a while for him to even shed the light on them. It took a Connecticut Post article to embarrass him into expressing or letting people know what his earmark requests were. But this year alone, he has requested $300 million in earmarks so far. That is astronomical. One congressman, multiply that by 435 and then 100 senators, that's a lot of money. They're talking about $20 billion this year if they ever get passed and pushed through. That's a lot of money of taxpayer dollars.
It's money. Okay.
Hang up and try your call again.
Sorry about that, caller. If you call, please call back. Talk a little bit about that. I saw in some of the research you were talking about what the Democrats, let alone what's going on in Hartford as far as trying to raise taxes on hardworking Americans everywhere, what's going on in Washington. Some of the tax proposals that Congressman Murphy had put forward were going to cause, well, you had a figure for each individual Connecticut family. What was the increase?
He had supported the 2 largest tax increases in American history.
Okay.
And it would have meant an average of $4,300 for a family of 4 per year in additional taxes in Connecticut.
Ouch. Caller, I'm sorry for the delay. You're on the air.
Hey, what's up? How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
What do you think of the caribou in Alaska? There are plenty of them. Don't you think we can get some of that oil?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think the caribou in Alaska have had their time, and I think it's our time to have lower gas prices.
Thank you. I mean, there are 3,000 caribou when they start drilling for oil. Now there's 23,000 caribou. The caribou are fine, except for this one right here.
Honestly, animals migrate, so they will naturally adapt to our drilling habits.
Thank you. I agree with you. What we have a state senator here who's running for U.S. Congress. What question do you have?
I have a question. My name is Harrison from Danbury, and I have a question. When Chris Murphy was in Congress in 2006, he was campaigning against Nancy Johnson, and he talked a lot about special interest groups and money accepted from politics. Do you think that he's upheld and he's living up to the standard that he set for himself?
Excellent question. That's what we've been talking about.
What we were just talking about. Well, just a few months ago, he was on NPR on a talk show. And he had said that the lobbyists, since the Democrats took over, were pushed to the corners. What he hasn't told everyone, though, is that from 2006, when the Republicans had control, to 2007, they had spent $220 million more in lobbying on the Democrats than the Republicans. He also doesn't talk about the fact that he's in the top 10 of the 50 freshmen for PAC money raised in Washington, D.C. And that he just had a PAC a fundraiser a few weeks ago with Barney Frank in Hartford, where he was targeting lobbyists and people who come before his committee, the Financial Services Committee, to raise money from them. So, you know, none of that is illegal, and none of that is necessarily immoral if the congressman would keep his word. And you know, he has said he is against special interest groups, against special interest money, but he's taking all of that money. Be honest about it. Let people know who you really are. Let them know that you're going to raise as much PAC money as you can, and that you're never going to stop, because that's what's going on right now. And by the way, having said that, he also wrote an op-ed piece in the Hartford Courant saying that he didn't have enough time to do his job because he was so busy raising money. So the better way that he wants to deal with this is to force the taxpayers to pay for his campaigns. Now, we know that it's happening in Connecticut right now. We also know that Barack Obama is under the taxpayer-funded campaign finance law on the federal level, but all you have to do is raise enough money and blow it off, which is what I think a lot of people would do.
And that's what Barack Obama did. Okay. Right. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi. I have a question for David.
Well, he's right here.
Oh, good.
So by all means, ask your question.
David, can you tell me how you and Congressman Murphy differ on federal spending?
Excellent question. Thank you.
I'd be happy to. We will differ the same way we differed on the state level. There were a number of budgets, year after year, where Congressman, then Senator Murphy, voted for massive tax increases and massive spending increases when we simply could not afford those increases. He was the the senator who crafted the nursing home bed tax, which is a tax that is $5,100 a year for someone who...
Wait, nursing home bed tax?
Correct.
Okay.
Where up until a few years ago, this tax didn't exist.
Nothing beyond the grasp of the taxman. Go ahead.
Absolutely nothing. I mean, we're talking about people, elderly people, or someone who's younger and sick in a nursing home, and they're now going to have to pay $5,100 a year more in taxes just for going to a nursing home. He also supported the death tax in Connecticut. And what that does is if you have a $2 million, and you might think that's for someone who's rich, $2 million put away, either in your 401k or a small business. If you have a small business especially, or a farm, then you get hit with a death tax that we didn't have before. The irony is they were trying to go after the so-called rich in New Canaan, Darien, and some of those people, by the way, are very rich. But those people have enough money and wherewithal with their accountants to be able to have 2 residences, 2 homes. So what's been happening is those people just change their residence. So we lose that revenue that they're talking about.
Yeah.
We also lose all the income tax revenue that we might have been getting from them, or any other tax revenue, because now they're living someplace else more than 6 months out of the year. This is hitting, the town it's hitting the most is Southbury because of Heritage Village, all the seniors that are living there that were small business owners or farmers.
Huh. You know, this is something, again, in my extensive research about you, this being a anti-tax activist isn't something, you know, I think sometimes, you know, the economy's in trouble, politicians will wet their finger and say, you know, which way is the wind blowing? Okay, we want to cut taxes, you know, limit the burden of government on people. I think I'll go in that direction. But I actually saw you give a speech on the Senate floor in the Capitol in Hartford, and you talked about a little-known tax called the business entity tax in Connecticut. And this is just a tax, the way you explained it was, whether you make money or you don't make money, we're just going to tax you. And you said, you know, you talked about nickel and diming the little guy. I'm an independent businessman, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I hearken back to Ronald Reagan when he said that government doesn't fix problems, government is the problem. And when they're constantly nickel and diming the wage payer in an effort to somehow glean the votes of the wage earner, in the end it just, you know, causes the whole thing to break down. So this is something that you've come to throughout your political career, and isn't something that you're just sort of putting on because you're running for Congress. Can you speak to that?
Sure. That business entity tax
Yeah.
was put into place about 5 years ago.
By the way, did that get voted down, or did the Democrats successfully put it in place?
The Democrats successfully kept it in place.
Ouch.
And they're the
Did
ones...
they see your speech? Because it was a good speech.
I thought so too. My
But
mom
they still
thought it was
put
a
it
great
in there.
speech, by the way,
Okay,
but unfortunately they weren't swayed by it.
Okay.
Chris Murphy voted for that tax, by the way, years
You
ago.
did. I'm seeing a pattern here.
And we also tried to repeal it while he was in office, and he voted against repealing it a number of times. And we're trying to do it again. We tried this year again. It's a tax just for giving the state of Connecticut the pleasure of opening up a business or having a business. You could be losing money hand over fist, you could be struggling, and it really is just a punitive tax that hits people, a lot of small business owners, when they're down. And it should be eliminated immediately, but we couldn't get it done this year because we're in the minority party.
Okay. All right, we have a question that came in via the internet. By the way, they're going to roll a website, heiserhouse@aol.com, or an email, heiserhouse@aol.com, so please email in your questions as well. He said, when talking about the high cost of gasoline, one must factor in the state's gas tax, which has been one of the highest in the nation for a number of years. It says, seeing that Connecticut is currently paying one of the highest prices for gasoline per gallon in the nation, in your entire time on the state Senate, with an emphasis on the past rather than the present, what have you done to address this issue? Have you personally tried to introduce or co-sponsor any legislation that would cut the price of the state's gas tax? If so, when, and if not, why? And then the follow-up question is, would you agree that the gas crisis is primarily based on speculation market rather than on supply and demand issues? If your answer is yes, please elaborate. Okay, so what this person is asking, it's a legitimate question. He's saying, hey, okay, you know, you're talking about the high cost of gasoline. You were in Hartford for 14 months. Connecticut has the highest cost of gasoline. What did you do about it?
Well, what some people may not remember...
We have a follow-up call. So caller, hold on. We'll get to you.
What some people may not remember is that before I was involved in the House, before I had gotten there, our gas tax on the front side was 39 cents a gallon, not 25 cents a gallon.
Okay, whoa. So before you even showed up, it's 39 cents a gallon Connecticut state gas tax.
Correct.
Okay.
And in my 4 years in the House, I had sponsored and co-sponsored and fought for lower gas taxes. We eliminated it in one shot by 7 cents in 1 year. And then another year, we'd taken off another 7 cents, bringing it down to 25 cents per gallon.
So that's where it is right now?
That's where it is on the front side.
Okay.
Now, the gross receipts tax is a hidden tax that no one sees. The wholesaler pays it.
Right.
But they don't. They pass it along to us, the consumer.
Right.
It was
That's why I have to laugh about the oil company windfall profit tax. I mean, what the heck do you think that's where we're, you know, you're paying $100 for things, it's going to be more. Sorry.
Yeah, no, they would clearly pass it along to us. But it was 5 cents a gallon a few years ago. The one tax increase I supported was when we were about $1.50 a gallon. We unanimously passed a bill to increase the gross receipts tax to pay for much needed transportation improvements, road, rail, bridges, and a host of other things, because we had safety issues on our bridges, and it was something we all agreed upon. Now, on the Senate floor, I was the only one that did make the argument we should be using our surplus money instead of raising this tax. However, it was going to be specifically focused, this tax, on road and rail and transportation improvements. Having said that, now,
Caller, hold on. Go ahead.
Just a little bit more history.
Okay, sure.
It goes up, it's based upon a percentage of the cost of the wholesale price. So to make it easy, right now it's 7 cents a gallon. If the wholesale price was $1, it would be 7 cents on that price.
Right.
The wholesale price is $2, 14 cents.
Right.
So what's been happening is, because the price of gasoline has been going up and up and up, so is the tax. So there's been a windfall for the state of Connecticut. Now, this was supposed to go up to 7.5% July 1st, and it was supposed to go up again in 2013 to 8.1%. I had supported, a couple of years ago, and Murphy opposed, stopping the increases because we were getting too much money in. People were being fleeced. He voted not to lower the tax. I did. And then this year, I had gotten an amendment through on a committee bill to stop the increases at a minimum. The Democrats never brought to the floor of the House. Finally, during special session, we tried not only to bring the tax down from 7% down to 5%, we tried to cap the amount that we could tax. So if the wholesale price was, whatever, $2 a gallon, we would cap it. I forget what the number was. So if it kept going up, the tax wouldn't keep going up. The Democrats wouldn't let us. They stopped us on procedural motions. They wanted the tax to go up no matter what. They wanted us, the future increase to go up. We finally got them to at least stop this increase, because it is an election year. But we are taking in about $200 million in more money than we need, and it's being stolen from the transportation fund, in essence, and going to the general fund so they can spend it on other projects. They're very irresponsible.
So you've been an anti-tax guy from day one. Hold on, let's see if you help. Caller, you're on the air. Sorry for the wait.
Yeah, that's fine. First, I want to thank David for the job you've done in Hartford all these years.
Just out of curiosity, where do you live?
In Danbury.
And has he represented you?
Yes.
Have you ever had a need to call him on some state business or anything?
Lots of times.
Really?
Yes.
And has he been responsive?
Yes, he has.
Does he return his calls?
Yes, he does.
Is he pleasant?
Yes, he does.
Okay, thank you.
And his young lady in his office is wonderful too.
Is that right?
I'm going to miss him up there.
Well, yeah, but he's going to go to Washington to represent us there.
Yeah, I'm sure David recognizes my voice.
Hi, Lynn. How are you?
Hi. Anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Cappiello's mother has just called the show, and we're delighted that Lynn Cappiello has taken the time to call.
Actually, it's Lynn Waller.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Wanted to ask a couple questions. One, David, where do you stand as a senior citizen on Medicare? Where do you stand on universal health care? Are you going to allow them to change or fight them changing things for Medicare? Or universal health care for everyone? Are we going to be lumped in with that? It really concerns me. And two, what can we do to help you in your campaign? And I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
Thank you, Lynn. Well, I don't support universal health care if it means government-run health care. Examples have been used, how wonderful some other systems are across, our borders or in Europe. But what you don't hear are the long lines that people have to wait in for months and months to see their doctor. You don't hear that they can never even choose their doctor. I know someone who I was just speaking with yesterday whose family is in Canada, and he is in his 50s. He needed heart surgery. But every time he was in the front of the line, someone else it was more life-threatening for someone else. They kept getting bumped up and bumped ahead of him.
So we had to wait. Ending to this, or sad?
So far, no operation. It's been weeks and weeks and weeks, and I don't think Americans want that for their health care system.
My wife grew up in Toronto, and her entire family is there, and my mother-in-law has actually had a very rough time right now, something similar. There was a medical issue that came up, and it was delayed and delayed and delayed, and it's caused a real problem. I think Americans, generally speaking, say, hey, someone's going to help pay for your health insurance.
Right.
They're like, hey, that sounds good to me because this stuff's expensive. But they don't realize when you turn it over to the government to run it, just ponder, if you will, the same people that run the DMV are not going to run your health care. Do the math. It's not a pretty picture. But go ahead.
And what you also don't hear is that people with money from these countries end up coming to America to get these procedures done if they have to wait in line.
Yeah.
So the rich people can still avoid
Mayo
that
Clinic,
system.
people from Canada are coming down for that.
But the other issue is, looking at funding. I mean, the taxes are astronomical in Canada and other countries, but look at the funding. Right now, our Congress is still avoiding fully funding the Medicare system. They keep rating the funding, just like Social Security. So if our government is incapable right now of funding those systems, how do they sell to me that we are going to be able to fund a universal healthcare system where the government runs everything, with the same government bureaucracies that you talked about at the DMV, the same government that couldn't handle Hurricane Katrina? That worries me. I do think there's a whole lot of things that we can do to make the healthcare system better, to deal with cost drivers, greater accessibility, things we've done at the state level, but it's not government-run healthcare.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. We're going to take this call, and then we're going to go to a break, and we're going to have the weather and some local sports news. We're going to take this caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello, yes, thanks for joining us. We have State Senator, soon-to-be U.S. Congressman David Cappiello here.
Yes, I just wondered what his feelings on all the earmarks that they have in Washington, how he felt about those.
All right, you're going to answer that, and then we'll go to the...
Sure.
Thanks you very much for the call.
Oh.
I think, quite frankly, we should do away with earmarks as we know them. We're looking at times of $30 or $40 billion proposed earmarks.
Just for the uneducated, which I am the chief among, when you say earmarks, I mean, I think of pork barrel spending. Is that sort of like when, the nominee for president, McCain, talks about a bridge to nowhere,
right.
A $5 million bridge that goes to someplace where there's 7 people or something like that. Is that an earmark?
That is an earmark, but the core issue, I believe, is that earmarks are based solely, and it's funding for your district,
right.
but solely based upon who has power and shoving it into a bill in the middle of the night without any public hearing, any vetting of the project whatsoever. There's no competitive bidding process.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it's based on any need.
Okay.
It's just because I'm in power, I'm in Congress, I'm going to stick it into a bill.
Okay, so you have a farm bill, and some powerful congressman from a district somewhere says, well, we want to have a research the toads thing for $2 million for a special college I like.
Right.
We're going to put it in this farm bill, and if you vote it down the farm bill, then everyone's going to vote for the farm bill, so
Right.
you get this earmark.
They buy off congressmen and women to vote for these bills, and then they can come back to their district and say, look at what I've done for you.
Yeah.
Now, granted, on the state level, we have a bonding process, but it's a process. You propose bills. You have public hearings. You have a vetting process. You have a bond commission. There are a set of criteria, steep grants that are focused on small town economic assistance programs. They have a set of criteria. Those grants are acceptable. We still shouldn't, have billions and billions of dollars of them, but they're acceptable because there are criteria, not based upon who's in power.
Okay. Really enjoyed our talk. We're going to take a break now and go to the weather and sports with our crack team of meteorologists and sports experts. And so we're going to break and go to that right now.